Yes, sir.
Kim, you see how I did that? Show you ready. I need the agenda. Thank you. Welcome. This is the City of Lamarque City Council Special Meeting of June 30th, 2021. Notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Lamarque, Texas will conduct a special meeting on Wednesday, June 30th, 2021, beginning at 4 p.m. in the council chambers at 1109B Bayou Road, Lamarque, Texas, as well as via teleconference hosted through Zoom for the purposes of considering the following agenda. The meeting has been called to order. Kiera, would you give us a roll call, please?
Present.
Present.
Oh, sorry. Present. Oh, I'm all confused.
Present.
Thank you, Kara. Okay. Item 3, citizens participation. Limited to 3 minutes per person. Comments from the public will be heard at this time. Any person with city-related business who has signed up may speak to council on a specific agenda item, limited to 3 minutes. You should give the mayor your name and the item you wish to speak about. In compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, the council may not deliberate on comments. Personal attacks will not be allowed. Personnel matters should be addressed to the city manager during normal business hours. If you are joining us via telephone, you can press *6 to unmute or to mute. If you're participating via smartphone, tablet, or computer, there should be a microphone somewhere on your screen that you would press to mute and press to unmute. Are there any persons wishing to speak at this time? Let's take the internet. Kyle, do you have anyone wishing to speak?
There's a John Wayne.
Yeah, also there.
John Wayne, are you a reporter?
Do you wish to speak?
Mr. Ferguson?
That's me, Mayor. I don't have any questions for you right now.
Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Thank you.
Are there any persons in the audience today wishing to speak? Very good, very good. We'll move to item 4A, new business. Discussion, possible action to adopt resolution number letter R-2021-0014, providing notice of intent to create a tax increment reinvestment zone and directing city staff to move forward with the preliminary procedural steps necessary for the creation of the reinvestment number 3, Lamarque, Texas, for the gateway at Lamarque Development near the intersection of I-45 and FM 1764, including publication and scheduling of a public hearing regarding the creation of the zone. Council may convene in a closed meeting pursuant to section 551.071, consultation with attorney, and or section 551.086, economic development at the Texas Government Code regarding this item. All action will be taken in open session. Before we begin a discussion, we are going to hear from our city attorney. She will outline some of the parameters of what we'll be discussing today. And perhaps we may hear from Mr. Reed and the Reed King Investment Group. And then we'll move to the next portion of this discussion. Ms. Purnell.
Thank you, Mayor. So council, I know you've got one reinvestment zone that is active right now. And this is a request for a reinvestment zone number 3. That's going to be in some ways a more traditional reinvestment zone because it is for new development. Chapter 311 of the Texas Tax Code lays out a statutory framework for a tax increment zone. Just for the public to be aware, a tax increment zone basically freezes the tax value at what the city is receiving now off of property. The remainder of the tax as the property value goes up ends up getting put back into that property through a very tightly regulated flow of funds and public oversight. But that money goes back into the zone, which would be the area that's in red on this resolution, And it's to build infrastructure in places where there isn't infrastructure or where there is not sufficient infrastructure for certain types of development. This is a common development mechanism or financing mechanism because most cities do not have the capital upfront. And so it lets you work with the developer in a way that is approved under state law. There are many requirements before you get to the point of actually creating a zone. Once it's created, it has reporting requirements, it has deadlines before you can even actually create the zone under ordinance, which of course in Marque takes 2 readings. You've also got some publication and public notice and public hearing requirements. So what the resolution before you does is effectively kick off the negotiation process. In a tax increment zone, sometimes other governmental entities are involved. And usually the city is kind of the first one. And everybody wants to know that everybody else is on board. So all you're committing to, if the council chooses to pass this resolution, is that at this point, you're willing to consider creating a reinvestment zone. And you're promising that you will direct staff to start the process so you can have publication, public hearings, and the documents necessary to consider whether you want to create a zone or not. What that's going to do, and the developer can probably speak to this as well, what that's going to do is let the other governmental entities who might be able to take part in this zone negotiate, knowing that the city is at least going to start the process. And it lets the developer take that resolution and say, look, the city's at least starting. Are you willing to come on board? Thank you, Mayor. If there's anything more specific, I'm happy to talk about that.
Yes, ma'am. We will, Council, I would ask that we would hold our questions until we get to the next phase of this discussion. Mr. Reed, are you prepared to address us at this time, or would you like to address us at a later time?
I'm happy to answer any questions, or we can go into it later.
Okay. So council and audience, some of these preliminary discussions are very sensitive in nature. And in fact, it is probably appropriate for us to retreat, unfortunately, for a brief moment into executive session. But I can promise you that we will return. Mr. Reed and his team is here. Ms. Parnell is here. The council is here. And we will have an open discussion about this. But there are some sensitive and delicate pieces of information that we have to gain an understanding of. And then we can come out to make sure that we are addressing those issues that are before us in a way that wouldn't cause any damage to the city of Lamarck, nor to any potential development plans that the developer has. So if you would allow us, with your patience, a few moments, we will retreat back into executive session. Is that agreeable?
Mayor, if this is under 551-086, you can invite your king and the
Okay.
representatives come with you.
Okay. And so as we move from the regular meeting, we'll move into our executive session under section 551.086. This is the section that covers economic development. And so that will allow us to bring Mr. King and his associates to the back with us for a brief discussion. Promise, promise, promise. We'll be back out and we'll be transparent. So we're closing our regular special meeting at 4:09, and we will retreat into our executive session at this time. we had to get a few things understood, and we're back. Our executive session ended at 5:03. We are now back in our regularly, our special meeting, excuse me. And we are now about to embark on a discussion with the community. And so we'd like to invite Mr. Reed, Mr. Jeff Reed, and his team to the front so that they can just give us a brief understanding from their perspective of what TERS are and how they benefit communities. We've asked them to do that in layman's terms so that we all can understand it. And then we'll allow Ms. Purnell to help us with a better explanation, and then you'll hear from this council. Today, I wanted to say to you before Mr. Reed approaches, today is not about the who, it's not about the what, the when, or the where of this development. It's about the how. This is primarily about the financing mechanism. And so you won't hear of any entities that may come or may not come. What you will hear is how TERS work and how they potentially benefit communities, because we want you to have that information. Is that clear? Good deal, Mr. Reed.
It's on. Yep, it's on. Thank you. My name is Jeff Reed. I'm with Reed King. We're a mixed-use developer based here in Houston. My partner and I are native Houstonians. I grew up at Clear Creek High School. This is my part of the world. We are under contract on the old Belt Greyhound Park right now. We've been under contract about a year on that. And we see potential in that tract to be a very significant mixed-use development to serve this community. And we've been working on it for quite some time. We don't have commitments from any of our pieces or users, but we've approached a lot of people about that specific piece of property, and it's got a lot of challenges. It's got a 250,000 square foot, 30-year-old dog track on it that we tried diligently to figure out what to do with that, and we ran out of options. It was too expensive, so that's going to come down. And then we have about 93 acres of land under contract there that we plan to put into a development that will hopefully have a retail component, a restaurant component, some entertainment, probably some residential associated with it, and an office building. So it's kind of our vision. You know, and I got to be careful telling you this, is our vision doesn't always end up being what shows up on a piece of property. You get a piece of property and you start working, you get it out into the marketplace, which we have not done yet at a high level. And site plans change and different people show up. And sometimes it's a pleasant surprise who shows up that you never anticipate being part of your project. So what we have there in the 88 acres is we have a very old facility, an old parking lot. We have a lot of development challenges. So when we started looking at how to put that into production, we obviously need to demo the dog track, demo the parking lot. We've got to extend utilities. Part of our plan on this property is taking a drive, 4-lane estimated drive through the middle of that site. We know, and we have heard from all the residents of the Marque down here what 1764 and I-45 looks like in the morning and afternoons going through that intersection. And that's just with Walmart and Sam's and some retail over there. And if we're successful bringing what we'd like to bring to the intersection, there would be more traffic. So we've been working with traffic consultants, with TxDOT, to come up with a plan that we think will significantly enhance circulation around that by bringing a drive and a traffic light through the middle of our project. It's about 7 acres of land that we're doing that on. Again, that's an expensive venture there. We're also making improvements on 1764. The improvements on 1764 will be some new median brakes, and we're redesigning it to accommodate the traffic that's there. I think outside of that, most of what I'd like to turn over to Steve is we've approached the city to partner with us on this venture. And my partner on this venture, what we're looking for is to create a tax incremental reinvestment zone. I still can't say it. He lives this world. But, and I'll let Steve explain what that is, but it's basically a mechanism that helps us make the math work to take an old facility like that and bring the level of project that we want to bring into the park. We have a vision for that project, and it doesn't happen without having some kind of participation from the city. So I'll let Steve kind of talk on that.
Thank you very much, Jeff, and council, mayor. Thank y'all for the opportunity. My name is Steve Robinson. I'm with Allen Boone Humphreys Robinson. We're a law firm based in Houston and we've got an Austin office. And we really only do one thing, and that's work with cities and developers to provide public infrastructure to support economic development and growth. The use of special districts and tax increment reinvestment zones is really a way to provide public infrastructure to large projects. If you buy a single piece of property that is on a thoroughfare, and has water and sewer in the front, most of what you are doing is building your project. But when you have these very large projects like this project that don't have any infrastructure, there's a massive amount of infrastructure that is needed in order to activate this site. It's normally not associated. You're just building an apartment complex or something. You don't need to build major thoroughfares and major drainage facilities, and roadways, and all of those things. So how do we do that and balance the interests of the cities? One of the primary tools used throughout Texas is the use of what is around the country called tax increment financing. The Texas term is tax increment reinvestment zone. And that's merely taking an area that you draw a boundary around. In this case, it'd be just our property that Reed King is buying. And in that area, you basically freeze the taxes that are currently being collected. That means that the taxes that the city is currently collecting, the county is currently collecting, et cetera, those will continue to be collected. And then as redevelopment occurs and there is an increase in taxable value in that area, that increase is available to help pay for the public infrastructure within that site. Now, the tax increment reinvestment zone, when it begins, doesn't have any money. And so one of the things and one of the reasons why these are popular is that the city isn't asked to go out and expend the money to build the roads, to build the drainage, to build the water and sewer facilities. Those are all public facilities that will be owned by the city. The way that the tax increment reinvestment zone works is it is a reimbursement mechanism, meaning the developer is obligated to come out to this tract and build all of those facilities that will be conveyed to the city or to TxDOT, or whoever is going to be the public agency that's going to ultimately own those public facilities. And then as the value increases, that increased value, a portion of that value will be utilized to reimburse the developer for expending those dollars. And just to give you a simple example, if a piece of property is worth $1 million and the city is collecting taxes on $1 million, and then development adds another $50 million on there, the city would continue to collect the tax on the $1 million that was before. And then the $50 million would be available to new taxes that are only collected by this new project company. A portion of those taxes are available to help repay the public infrastructure. And really, but for providing that public infrastructure, these projects wouldn't happen. You know, in this location, trying to be competitive is difficult. In the city of Texas City, there already exists this identical structure over Lago Mar. And so in order for the city to be, and this site to be competitive with the commercial areas in Lago Mar, this mechanism is a way to put us on an equal footing. We are today just at the beginning of a very long process. This is just the start. Under the Texas tax code that provides for the use of these vehicles, there is a very long process that includes public hearings, production of what I call a roadmap. It's really called a project plan and plan of finance. And that's a document that details exactly what projects these dollars can be used for and how the financing system will work. In addition to the tax increment reinvestment zone, we'll be utilizing an overlay municipal management district. And that's probably easy to understand if you understand what a MUD is out in a residential community. This municipal management district is basically a commercial MUD that overlays just our property. And so what we're doing there is basically taxing ourselves to pay for the balance of the infrastructure. So we will begin this, if the council moves forward today, all we're doing is initiating the process to begin having the discussions, the public hearings, producing agreements, all of which have to come before council, all of which we'll have public hearings on. So we are at the very beginning of what is probably a multi-month process to begin explaining how this is going to work and how the mechanism works and how the math will work on this specific project. With that, council, I'm happy to answer any other questions that you may have about the use of tourism. Virtually every city in this region has used this vehicle for economic development. I think the city of Houston has 30 something of these. Sugar Land, Katy, Leeds City, Texas City have all used these as a way to attract these very, very large commercial investments in their cities.
Thank you. Dear, did you want to add something?
I think that's pretty thorough explanation, unless council has specific questions for me that you want me to discuss, or if there's any questions from the public that Mayor you'd like me to answer.
Okay. Well, let's start with Councilwoman McAuliffe, and we'll work our way back this way.
I don't have any questions. I'm really grateful to everyone for the time and the discussion we had, but I do want to just point out some of the things that I think are the bite-sized chewable things to latch onto, and that is that in a zone like this, if we approve it, is an investment in the longevity of the city, right? It's to make a certain kind of development and mix of development happen that we can't afford to do otherwise. And the TERS agreement would be for 30 years, right? And so 30 years in the span of a city, I would assume goes by really fast. So I haven't been a part of the city for 30 years, but I can only assume that it will be in the blink of an eye. And this is the kind of thing that I think that, it can be a big concept to wrap your head around, but for me, that is one of the big take homes. Is 30 years is, not a small commitment, but also when we're talking about utilizing, leveraging a property that has been historically incredibly hard to figure out what to do with, and making it better for a long term for the city. I think that's very exciting.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Mr. Carlson.
I think it's a great
step forward for the city. I think it would benefit the city immensely. Because we would be drawing in a lot of people from different cities. So I think it would, and like the councilwoman said, it's takes care of the infrastructure that this city could not afford on its own. And that's, I think in long term, it would highly successful for the city.
Thank you. Ms. Jansen?
I think it's a win-win for Lamarck. $25 million passes Lamarck on I-45 going to Galveston every day. And we don't have anything right now that really captures that to make people look our way. So I thank you for considering us, and I hope and pray that our city will definitely support this effort of economic opportunity finally coming to our part of the Gulf Coast.
Thank you, Ms. Jansen. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just looking at a statement from Mark Twain that says there are 2 times in a man's life when he shouldn't should not speculate, when he can't afford it and when he can. So when this issue first arose, when it was first presented, that's where I began. Can the city of Lamarck afford this? And the second part of this process was understanding that Mr. Reed had a vision, and he's not only has a vision, but he's involved in pursuing that vision aggressively. Doesn't have anything, as he said, in specifics that right now, but the action, I think that council, as I understand the resolution, and Darren and I have chatted about this, it satisfies our curiosity. Let's see what can happen. Let's see what a beginning is. Let's hear the further details. And that part about whether we can afford it, I was assured, and here once again, that these are worked in the plans, that the city is not going to be at risk in terms of, and if I'm correct in saying this, in terms of what this resolution would represent if it were approved. So like I said, I'm in a better place than when this was first presented, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's important for us to understand that this allows for us to realize important infrastructure improvements that we could not realize on our own. One of the things that you heard was that there will be a street that will connect 1764 to 2004. Regardless of whatever happens to the development, to those users that will be a part of that development, if they all pack up and go home the next day, that's still our street. There's drainage and other utilities that will be put in place on that development. Again, if they pack up and go home tomorrow, those are still our improvements, infrastructure improvements. And so for a city, that's important. A city our size just simply cannot do those things on our own unless we were to pass bonds or go into debt. And it would be tremendous amounts of debt that we would have to go into to satisfy those needs. And so what we're looking at in this tiers is the idea that the developer will do these things, will provide these improvements for us because they want to develop on the land. Yes, that's true. But that this is a mechanism for the city to reimburse them, right? For those expenditures and those investments that they are making on the front end, so that this development can be realized. The other alternative would be for us to go out for bonds. We would still have to go into debt, and we would still have to pay on the debt to get these improvements. And so TERS and other mechanisms, financial mechanisms, financing mechanisms, they can be scary. But when we look at it based on how we actually go about our business as a municipality, we would have to invest one way or the other, right? And so that's what we have to understand. That's what we need to know to be important to us. Dearest writing me a letter, and I'm gonna get it in a minute and share it with you. Yes, yes. And the other thing that Dear wants to say is this is not our property, right? That's a clarifying point. You want to share that with them? And I'll pick back up on my notes.
Yeah, just to clarify what the
Yeah.
mayor is saying, because this can get scary. At this point, we are certainly not proposing a tax increment zone that would issue bonds. So if anybody gets worried
Nobody's
about
saying
that, we're not proposing issuing bonds. We're just proposing setting up the tax increment zone. And
Right.
it is not anticipated to be a bond issuance terms.
Clearly, what I'm suggesting is if we were to do these improvements on our own, thank you, Dear, for signaling that for me. We would have to find our own financing mechanism, which is usually going into debt, right? And so we would have to make investments either way if we want improvements. This way, the monies that are being generated off the improvements will go into reimburse for those infrastructure improvements. Not monies that we are currently receiving from the dog track, but those monies that are over and above as the improvements start to become realized. And so that's important for us to know as well. Now, in this proposed TERS, there's a 75-25 split, which means that there are even portions of the improvements that will go to the city, that will come to our coffers. So it's not 100% all of those reimbursements going back to the developer, but 25% of those will be coming back to us. And so we will have even more benefits from this. And so it's important that we understand that. I wanted to clarify that for you as much as I possibly can. There was a discussion about sales tax. There will be some sales tax that will be generated on this deal. I'm not going to go into that part of it because we're getting close to the who and the when. But just know that this is a mechanism that's used to help finance infrastructure improvements. And it's a deal that we will walk through for a few months. The citizens will have an opportunity to see the deal, comment on the deal. There will be public hearings. And so this is not something that will happen today with this vote. This vote simply says we're ready to start the process of seeing if this is feasible for our community. Nothing more, nothing less. It allows the staff to begin to work with this team to see what we can do and to see how that would look for our community. Now, I would say, I thought I heard Dira say something about perhaps the community might want to have questions. Did you say that? So I would say for the next 10 minutes, if there's anybody in the audience that has questions about the how, the TERS, we have some experts here on that. If you'd like to ask them questions, you can come up to the podium, state your name and your address. And certainly we want to be as transparent as possible. And we want to allow you a chance to engage these developers. Anybody? Okay. Going once. Going twice. Ms. Martin, I see you. You sure? I'm teasing. All right, guys, we want to be, this council wants to be as transparent as possible. So it might be unique for us to say, hey, you want to ask some questions, but that's who we are as a council. So you've had that opportunity. We thank you for participating and for being a part of this. Dira wants to talk a little bit about the public hearing phase. And so we're going to let her speak to us about that, and then we'll come back to council.
So yeah, just since we're talking about the how, do be aware that the process itself is very transparent. It's regulated by statute. Even after the zone is created, it's regulated by statute, by ordinance, and by the project and financing plans that are adopted. But throughout the process, in the public hearing, you certainly have the option to talk to council at other times, but the public hearing is specifically looking for public input on the zone. on the preliminary financing plan. If you have questions or concerns, you can come to the council meeting, but be aware you can also put in public comments in advance. You have to send those to the city clerk directly for them to end up in the council packet. But if you can't attend the meeting and you want to send in a comment, that's cityclerk@cityoflamarque.org. The city clerk may throw something at me for this, but anyway, definitely make your comments or ask your questions so that the council and the various people associated with the project can answer them for you. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am. All right, council, do we have any other comments before we get into this vote? Sure. I'm teasing. All right, gang, let's go. New business 4A, let's pick it back up. We're gonna need a motion in a second. Discussion possible action to adopt resolution number letter R-2021-0014, providing notice of intent to create a tax increment reinvestment zone and directing city staff to move forward with the preliminary procedural steps necessary for the creation of the reinvestment zone number 3, Lamarque, Texas, for the gateway at Lamarque Development near the intersection of I-45 and 1764, FM 1764, including publication and scheduling of a public hearing regarding the creation of the zone. I'll entertain a motion.
Move that we adopt the resolution.
The second,
Second.
any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 6, requests and announcements. Council, do we have any requests and announcements at this time?
I do, sir.
Yes, sir.
I would like to continue Miss Maggie on the boards that she's currently representing, sir. I believe it's the parks, or excuse me, the zoning board.
Miss Maggie.
Miss Maggie, oh, she's gonna kill me because I can't remember her last name. Manuel, yes.
Miss Maggie? Manuel?
It's
Yes.
Maggie Manuel right here.
I am so sorry. I am so sorry. But
Yes, sir. So that request was made, and what we'll do is we will definitely deal with that. We will act on that on the July 12th meeting. Kara, do you have that? Thank you. Thank
that's all I have. Thank you, sir.
you. So, yeah. Parting shots, closing comments again. Let me say this, gang. Mr. Jeff Reed saw something in our community that many people did not. And he brought this vision to us. We did not solicit him. Mr. Getty and his group didn't find Mr. Reed. Our city administration, this council, we didn't find Mr. Reed. Mr. Reed found us. And it takes a lot of courage to approach a city with a vision. And so, Mr. Reed, again, I want to thank you and your team for all that you all have done. You brought possibilities to Lamarque, and we're excited to see what that looks like with you. But I want to give credit where credit is due. Thank you for finding us in the midst of all of our transitions. We look forward to working with you and to see what that will look like in the future. Thank you, sir. We'll move for adjournment.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.